Hello readers by eyes and by ears, this is Mari Chan and welcome back to my channel. I am super excited because after the intense chapters before, we are continuing with the reading of Remnants of Filth Volume 4, also known as Yu by Rou Bao or just Meat Bun. I hope you all enjoy. Chapter 106, Suggestive Traces. No one on earth was less likely to criticize Muzhong Chuyi than Yue Chunqing. Since he was little, he had worshipped and loved Muzhong Chuyi, this uncle with whom he shared not a drop of blood. This was the reason a pampered young master like him would follow Shihajun to the northern frontier. This was the reason he would pore over all manner of books and records for any hint of a magical panacea. He knew coming to Bat Island alone was a mistake. He'd started regretting it almost as soon as he set out, and had long since realized he was a failure who'd troubled his fourth uncle and the others to come to his rescue. But no matter how he apologized, Muzhong Chuyi didn't soften in the slightest. He lashed out at Yue Chunqing, scolding him for not valuing the life his mother died to give him. He said such heartrending words to Jiang Yexue, who had opened his own veins to save his nephew. Yue Chunqing was devastated. Fourth uncle, I know I'm no good. I'm too stupid and impulsive. But I just wanted you to get better. But you won't tell me anything. What could I do but try to help on my own? I'm sorry. I couldn't find a cure and caused you so much trouble. But... He closed his eyes, tears flowing down his face. Won't you even listen to my explanations? He continued. You say my life came at the price of my mother's, and Yang, you say he's a bastard. But he didn't ask to be born to a concubine, and I didn't ask to kill my mother by being born. Why do you blame us? Fourth uncle, I revere you and love you. For so many years, I've agreed with all you say and adored all you do. But have you ever turned to look at me? Yue Chunqing sobbed. Have you ever seen me as your nephew? Even once? Chunqing, forget it. Chuyi's... Jiang Yexue murmured. Muzhong Chuyi's face was ashen. He cut Jiang Yexue off, his bright brown eyes fixed on Yue Chunqing's face as he spat each word. Let him speak. Jiang Yexue fell silent. Yue Chunqing wiped at his tears, hanging his head and sniffling. I don't know. I won't say any more. I shouldn't be rude to fourth uncle. I shouldn't talk back to fourth uncle. He muttered again and again. I shouldn't disagree with fourth uncle, as though to calm himself. But as he mumbled on, he buried his face in his hands and sobbed like a whimpering cub. Is it because you wish I was never born? Muzhong Chuyi froze. But my mother is dead. I'm not Muzhong Huang. I'm Yue Chunqing. The atmosphere in the cave turned glacial. Everyone could see Muzhong Chuyi trembling with the clashing emotions in his heart. His jade-like face flushed faintly as his bone-pale fingers curled into fists. He looked at Yue Chunqing, then at Jiang Yexue, and closed his eyes. Very well. Very well, he gritted out. He took a step back, and his sharp brows drew together as he coughed up bloody spittle. He covered his mouth with a sleeve, hiding it from sight. Muzhong Chuyi opened his phoenix eyes, red-rimmed and glimmering. His gaze raked over his two nephews, its freezing glint hiding heartbreak. I heard your explanation. I won't reprimand you any more, Yue Chunqing. His nails were digging into his palms so hard they nearly drew blood. But still, he lifted his chin and assumed a cold calm. Fend for yourself. With a sweep of his sleeves, he turned to leave. Xiaoju! Jiang Yexue cried after him. The sight of Muzhong Chuyi's expression seemed to wake Yue Chunqing from a nightmare. He stared at his uncle's retreating silhouette in blank confusion, tear tracks shining on his face. Fourth uncle. But Muzhong Chuyi was gone. He pretended not to see Goo Mahng and Moshi as he swept from the cave mouth, his face as pale as the first snow of winter. He took not a single look back. After more than a moment, Moshi broke the silence. How did it end up like this? Jiang Yeshui sighed. As soon as Chengqing woke up, Xiaoju started in on him. He asked why he would come to Bat Island alone, so Chengqing explained he wanted to find medicine for him. Xiaoju... He felt it wasn't worth Chengqing risking his life, so he grew even angrier and berated Chengqing for being without sense. Xiaoju's always had a temper. He doesn't mean it that way. I'm sorry these Yue clan matters are rather embarrassing. Finding himself in the middle of this mess, Mo Xi wasn't sure what to say either. It wasn't his nature to meddle in the business of others, so he paused and said only, "It's too dangerous out there. I'll go after Muzhong." "Hey!" Goo Mahng grabbed his arm. "What is it?" "That hissy beauty is too smart to go far. He just wants to calm down. Didn't you see his face when he left?" Goo Mahng glanced at Yue Chengqing and Jiang Yeshui, then lowered his voice so only Mo Xi could hear. He was so angry he was on the verge of tears. Mo Xi was stunned for a moment. Whose tears? Muzhong Chuyi's? Didn't he leave in a furious huff? Wouldn't it humiliate him if you went to look for him now? Give him some space, Goo Mahng advised. Mo Xi hadn't noticed any such vulnerability in Muzhong Chuyi's expression, but Goo Mahng had always been the more observant one. Since Goo Mahng had spoken, he wouldn't insist even if he did disagree. Jiang Yeshui was worried. "I'm afraid my Xiaoju..." "Don't worry." Goo Mahng stepped deeper into the cave, waving a hand. "You guys rest up a bit. I'll go find him in a little while. Then we can set out for Chonghua." "You figured out how to break through the barrier?" "Duh. Did you forget who I am? I was already this great back when we hung around together." They tidied the inside of the cave. Goo Mahng was the most idle among them, leaning against the cave wall to rest. He summoned his demonic dagger, spinning it in slender fingers. After playing it for a time, he felt a pair of hesitant eyes quietly watching him. Goo Mahng looked down and met the feathered girl Zhongzhong's wide eyes. Zhongzhong didn't expect Goo Mahng to suddenly notice her. She averted her gaze, but it was too late. Goo Mahng smiled. "Hi, gorgeous. Why are you looking at me like that?" You... Zhongzhong's pretty face was red. Stumbling and hesitant, she murmured, You smell strongly of him." His fingers spinning, the dagger froze. "Who?" he asked in surprise. Zhongzhong didn't make a sound, but her eyes flicked toward Mo Xi, who was standing next to Yue Chengqing, examining his wounds. Goo Mahng's lips quirked into a smile. "Oh, him? It's normal. We were sitting close to each other." "No, not that. You two seem like..." With a smile, Goo Mahng laid a finger on her lips, then patted her head and leaned over to whisper in her ear. "Don't worry. I know how astute you feathered people are. Demon blood runs in my body, and you're sensitive to demon sense, right? But, little beauty, demons and humans are not the same. While you're with us, you need to learn human rules. With some things, it's best to pretend you don't know. Behave, sweetheart." Hearing the soft rustle of their movements, Mo Xi turned. "What are you two doing?" Goo Mahng drew back from Zhongzhong and grinned. "Nothing. I'm just teasing her." He reached out and flicked the flame marking on Zhongzhong's forehead. "Remember what I said. Why don't you get ready to leave the island with us?" Thanks to the vulnerability Goo Mahng found in the barrier, evading Bat Island's defenses was the work of moments. The two nutboats broke past the clouds, and by the time the patrolling bat demons spied them, they were much too far away to pursue. Goo Mahng had invited the feathered girl Zhongzhong onto the ship as well. Once they were deep in the sea of clouds, he brought her out from the cabin. "Mount Youhua is right below us here. Miss Rong, you can go home." Zhongzhong leaned over the ship's rail and looked down. Beneath the vast layer of clouds, a greenish-blue mountain was visible, faintly glowing with the light of the feathered tribe's barrier. She couldn't help the pink flush that spread over her cheeks as she stared for a long while, lost for words, before turning to speak. Thank you, Da Guga." "Da Guga?" Goo Mahng smiled. "It's fine if you call us Da Guga. Even if you're older than all of us, you look younger. You can call us whatever you like." "You cured Chengqing of the goo," said Jiang Yeshui. "It is us who owe you a debt of gratitude, so it would be too bold of me to accept your thanks." Jiang Yeshui performed an obeisance. "Miss, take care." Zhongzhong was eager to go home. After bidding farewell to all of them one last time, dazzling gold-red wings sprouted from her back, and she gracefully leapt into the sea of clouds and disappeared into that golden light far below. Goo Mahng sighed. All right, we've performed the rescue and cured the poison. Time to go home and rest. But you guys can't sell me out, he warned. I plan to keep pretending to be stupid when I return to Chonghua, just as we agreed. Yue Chunqing was standing beside the mast with a thick coat draped over his shoulders, staring blankly at Muzhong Chuyi's pleasure boat in the distance. He'd not yet been apprised of Goo Mahng's situation, and at these words, turned to Goo Mahng in shocked silence. What did we agree? Before Goo Mahng could answer, Jiang Yeshui cut in. Don't worry, I'll explain it to him later. You two must have had a long night. Go back to the cabin and rest. Once we reach the capital, you'll need to report to His Imperial Majesty. Sure, I'll rest, but can you change rooms with Shizun? Goo Mahng asked. You can sleep with me, and Shizun can sleep in a different cabin. Jiang Yeshui hesitated. Did you two fight again? Haven't we been fighting this whole time? More like we never stopped, Goo Mahng smiled. Look, he hates me so much he's gnashing his teeth. Plus, he looks so deliciously pretty. Don't forget, I'm an insanely Out Kingdom demon. If I get too excited, I might end up defiling and killing him. What would we do then? Moxi and Jiang Yeshui stared. I'd really appreciate it. If it's too much of a bother, I'll go over to Muzhong Shenshang's boat and make do for a night. It's no bother at all, Jiang Yeshui replied. And Xiaoju is in a temper right now. We shouldn't disturb him. He gave Goo Mahng a small smile. If it makes Gu Xiong more comfortable. Jiang Xiong is as accommodating as ever. How nice. Goo Mahng batted his eyelashes at him, lips curving into a smile. Then he lifted the bamboo curtain and ducked into the cabin. Moxi stood silent for a moment, then announced, I'll go rest too. He disappeared into the other cabin. Yue Chunqing was stupefied. What happened between those two? He stammered. It's a long story. If you don't mind hearing it from me, I'll tell it to you from the beginning. With a twitch of his fingertips, Jiang Yeshui wheeled his chair over to Yue Chunqing. Chunqing, are you willing to hear me out? Yue Chunqing looked at Muzhong Chuyi's ship in the sea of clouds, then glanced down at Jiang Yeshui's wounded wrist. He hung his head. I'm sorry. I made things difficult for you all. You've said sorry many times. It's water under the bridge, replied Jiang Yeshui. Just don't be so reckless next time. You see how we all worry about you. Whether it's your father, your bofu, your uncle, or me. You meant well. You didn't act out of mischief. I know this, and I'm sure Xiaoju knows as well. His temper's always been like this when he's anxious. Don't think he doesn't care for you. Yue Chunqing stood in dejected silence and didn't raise his head. Jiang Yeshui instructed two little clay people to bring cushions and desserts. Sit down, he said to Yue Chunqing. You've just recovered, so have a snack. You'll feel better if you eat something sweet like a flour cake. Give it a try. The dawn breeze ruffled Yue Chunqing's hair. He sat down as told, watching the crooked little clay person that came to deliver snacks, then voiced his thanks and started nibbling on the cake. When half of it had disappeared, he reluctantly lifted his head. Did giving blood hurt? The wound on your wrist looked really deep. I have medicine. I have medicine too. Jiang Yeshui smiled. His eyes like two clear pools scattered with jasmine blossoms, their subtle fragrance rippling outward. Don't worry, it doesn't hurt, and I don't blame you. You don't need to be so nervous with me. Yue Chunqing's eyes were a little red. His head hung so low, his chin nearly touched his chest. I'm sorry. Jiang Yeshui sighed deeply. Silly child, why are you apologizing again? I treated you so badly before, but you still helped me like this. I feel very sorry. The light flush reddening his ears spread to his cheeks as his voice grew thick with shame and embarrassment. I'm apologizing on Fourth Uncle's behalf, too. We shouldn't have said that about you. He set down the flour cake, hesitated for a moment, then raised bright, limpid eyes. Jiang Er, Qingxu Elder, thank you. He still wouldn't call Jiang Yeshui Da Ge, but at least he didn't just say, hey, or call him by his full name with no mark of respect. Jiang Yeshui smiled, his cheerful expression like pearls beneath water, like flowers in the wind or feathery snow falling over a river in the dead of night. I don't blame you, and of course I don't blame him, Jiang Yeshui said softly. I've lost many people, my mother, my wife, my family. I understand some things a little better than you. Nothing is so important compared to life and death, and I won't bother quarreling over unimportant things. Also, he's a good person. Back when we were at Yue Manor, he never bullied me. Do you still want to come back to Yue Manor? Yue Chengqing asked. I'm teaching at the academy now, and all the disciples are very cute. Jiang Yeshui turned and smiled. Whether I come back or not, this isn't important either. Yue Chengqing sighed softly. You're so even-tempered. If only fourth uncle would be the same, then he wouldn't be Muzhong Chuyi, chuckled Jiang Yeshui. All right, let's speak no more of these things. Once he's cooled down, I'll talk to him properly. Weren't you curious about Goo Mahng a moment ago? I'll tell you what happened. Yue Chengqing nodded, pulling over a cushion and sitting closer to Jiang Yeshui. Jiang Yeshui's voice was soft as flowing water. Have you ever heard of the time mirror? By the time he finished telling the whole story, the sun was high in the sky. He produced a well-crafted yet very little old clock from his robes. This clock was unique. It held neither water nor sand, but scarlet beads. After looking down at it, Jiang Yeshui said, It's getting late. Use this time to rest before we return to the capital. Remember to keep Gu Shishun's secret. We made him a promise. Yue Chengqing went off to sleep, and Jiang Yeshui directed the little clay people to put away his cushion and the leftover tea and snacks. The walnut ship's sails fluttered in the wind as it soared under the vault of the sky. Jiang Yeshui sat beside the ship's railing, looking into the distance at Muzhong Chuyi's vessel. As he watched, the bamboo curtain on Muzhong Chuyi's pleasure boat rolled up, revealing a man's sickly face. Muzhong Chuyi seemed to have many things weighing on his mind and had opened the curtain for some fresh air. But he took not a single breath before he noticed Jiang Yeshui watching him through the banks of clouds. Muzhong Chuyi stopped cold. Jiang Yeshui gave him a tiny smile, his gentle face bathed in dazzling golden sunshine. With a twirl of his fingers, he conjured a paper crane and sent it gliding toward Muzhong Chuyi's bamboo window. Muzhong Chuyi slammed the curtain down with a discourteous crash. The paper crane stuttered in midair. It turned with a rustle and gazed clumsily at Jiang Yeshui. Honk! No matter if he's angry, send the message, Jiang Yeshui instructed. Honk! Having received its orders, the paper crane flapped its wings and transformed into a beam of golden light that darted unheedingly behind Muzhong Chuyi's tightly closed window curtain. Propping his elbows on the armrests of his wheelchair, Jiang Yeshui put a hand to his chin. Moments later, he watched the paper crane he'd folded tossed furiously out the window, crumbled into a tight ball. Jiang Yeshui arched a brow, unbothered. Then he shook his head, chuckling softly, and stepped into the cabin he now shared with Goo Mahng. Goo Mahng was exhausted. He'd already fallen asleep under the blankets. The faint scent of soap hung in the air. He must have just bathed. Yet this piqued Jiang Yeshui's curiosity. Goo Mahng was famously lazy and didn't like to bathe before sleeping. He'd always preferred to bathe in the morning. Jiang Yeshui had been his comrade for many years. He still remembered this quirk of Goo Mahn's. Why would he suddenly change his habits? When Goo Mahng had come in earlier, Jiang Yeshui had noticed the heavy weariness in his eyes despite his efforts to feign alertness. What was going on? He looked Goo Mahng over, but saw nothing strange. Just as Jiang Yeshui was about to tidy up and go to bed, a thought occurred to him. He froze. His dark brown eyes slowly scanned the scene, landing on the hair ribbon Goo Mahng hadn't removed. It was black with golden trim. Morsi's hair ribbon. Chapter 107. His Only Stain. Why would Goo Mahng use Morsi's ribbon to tie up his hair? Jiang Yeshui's mind was spinning with thoughts. Morsi was a clean freak. He never used other people's things. and others had better not think of touching his. But even disregarding Morsi's peculiarities, this situation was bizarre. Under what circumstances would someone take another person's hair ribbon by accident? The two of them had to have undone their hair and then put it back up. The more he thought about it, the graver his expression became. With a soft tap of Jiang Yeshue's fingers, he sent the wheelchair gliding soundlessly over to Goo Mahng and peered down. This hair ribbon trimmed in gold was embroidered with a soaring snake pattern. It definitely belonged to Morsi. Could it be that? Jiang Yeshue's heartbeat sped up. With bated breath, his eyes traced down from the hair ribbon to Goo Mangh's collar, where his lapels lay slightly open. But other than a mole on the side of his neck, there were no other marks. And at this moment, perhaps because he'd stared too long, Goo Mangh's senses prickled. His eyes flew open and he turned his head as his gaze met Jiang Yeshue's. All sleepiness vanished. Jiang Xiong? Goo Mahng sat up, rubbing his hair. Are we almost there? Is it time to get up? Jiang Yeshue cleared his throat and tore his eyes away from Goo Mangh's neck. No, I just came inside to get ready to rest. I saw you were sleeping and didn't wish to wake you. I didn't think I'd disturb you. Although he spoke evenly, his face was a little red as he turned aside and ducked his head in embarrassment. Goo Mahng took note of Jiang Yeshue's reaction. After a beat of silence, he summoned a lazy smile and said, Don't worry, I wake easily. It's not your fault. Jiang Yeshue kept his eyes on the floor. You should go back to sleep. I'll go wash up. All right. The instant Jiang Yeshue's figure disappeared behind the bamboo screen in the cabin, the smile on Goo Mangh's face vanished. He quickly rose and stepped up to the copper mirror to scrutinize his face. As far as he could remember, he and Morsi hadn't kissed, but his mind hadn't been clear, so he wasn't entirely confident of that. Jiang Yeshue's reaction was strange enough that Goo Mahng wanted to check himself over once more. After a long look, he found no marks whatsoever. Only then did he sigh in relief and lie back down in bed. He was probably overthinking. When he and Morsi were together, he often worried that others would find out about their relationship. After each dalliance, he would pull Morsi over and check every inch of his exposed skin for kiss marks, then make Morsi do the same to him. The intensity of their passion in those days had been too absurd. Goo Mahng genuinely feared that others might discover them. Morsi was a noble of the highest, most unattainable class. He hailed from 4 generations of heroes, descended from a line of generals. The daughters of the finest aristocratic families didn't dare dream of marrying him. If their secret were revealed, if it got out that the son of such heavenly lineage shared his bed with a filthy slave, what consequences would Morsi face? Goo Mahng had nothing, so he didn't care if others criticized him. But Morsi was different. His status was high, his reputation clear, his nature kind and righteous. He was so young and so pure. His involvement with Goo Mahng was the only stain on this noble youth. Goo Mahng feared such a stain would ruin Morsi's life, so he didn't see it as Morsi did. Morsi treated the most beautiful vision of their future together as his goal, heedlessly forging ahead in that direction while Goo Mahng hung up the most terrifying possible end as a warning bell, constantly reminding himself not to indulge in impossible dreams. The contrast between them now was all the more stark. Morsi was Chonghua's most celebrated general, while Goo Mahng had become the nation's most reviled traitor. In the time since his memories returned, Goo Mahng had thought back on all the things Morsi had done since their paths crossed again. Visiting him at Luomei Pavilion, protecting him at Wangshu Manor, asking for him in the throne room, even trying to stop the fight at the New Year's Eve feast. He felt himself drenched in a cold sweat. It was outrageous, all of it. Was Morsi crazy? Why did he still protect him? Everything he had done in the past, was it not enough to make Morsi hate him to the core? Had Goo Mahng been lucid, he would have absolutely never allowed Morsi to behave so foolishly. On the surface, nothing was obviously odd. Morsi's actions could be chalked up to the strength of their brotherhood, or to the depth of Morsi's grudge, so bitter he longed to torment this felon with his own 2 hands. But from another angle, A decorated general of the empire, one known to keep his distance from men and women alike, went to a brothel again and again for a traitor. Not only did he pay to bed said traitor, he even asked the emperor for him before the assembled imperial court. Upon taking custody of this condemned criminal, he had neither imprisoned nor brutalized him. Rather, he'd given him all he could ask for in food and drink, personally taught the traitor to read, and taken him to the healer for medicine. This traitor slept in General Mo's bed, wore General Mo's clothes, shared food at General Mo's table, and listened to General Mo reading poetry on a snowy night. What the actual fuck was he doing? Shee was insane. When Goo Mahng turned his back on Chonghua, the last thing he wanted was any further connection to Shee, but none of his careful planning had included his own amnesia or Shee's mule-like stubbornness. He began to worry. If someone came to stir up shit and asked what kind of punishment that damnable traitor was enduring in Shiha Manor, how would Shee answer? Despite racking his brains, Goo Mahng was unable to think of a single acceptable response Shee could give. What was he going to say? This general swore at him once in a moment of boredom? Forget the absurdity of what had transpired that night. Neutralizing poison? Controlled by the drug? What a joke! The one who had been dosed with aphrodisiac was Goo Mahng, not Shee. Had any other traitor been inflamed by lust to the point of wishing for death, would a cold beauty like General Mo have lowered himself to personally relieve their torment? Hacking them to death would be considered merciful. Goo Mahng wasn't stupid. He knew Shee still held him in his heart. The enormity of it stunned him, but it also sunk him into utter despair. He could scheme over every black and white chess piece on the board, all of them save for his general, his lover, his princess, the piece he wanted to protect the most. Shee was not under his control, and this man he couldn't control had made a mistake and slept with him again. But it couldn't go any further. Just like the secret affair and ceaseless lust of their youth, their love and desire stopped here. It could never stand in the light of day. It could never walk the honorable path. If what happened last night was made known, Shee would fall into an endless hell alongside him, forever unable to cleanse his name. With all this in mind, Goo Mahng found himself glancing back toward where Jiang Yeshui had disappeared. Lowering his head guiltily, he sniffed himself once, then twice to be sure. All he smelled was the faint scent of soap. Jiang Yeshui wasn't of the feathered tribe. He couldn't have noticed any less perceptible sense. He was probably overthinking. Goo Mahng sighed, burying his face in the bedding and digging his hands into the blankets. Shee, my princess, my little dummy. Oh, what should I do with you? He slept until the sun sank below the horizon. At twilight, their walnut ship finally reached the outskirts of Chonghua's capital. The tea stalls had long packed up, and the streets were mostly empty. Muzhong Chuyi touched down soon after. He disembarked from his pleasure boat and briskly turned to leave. Yue Chengqing haltingly spoke up. Fourth uncle. Muzhong Chuyi acted as if he hadn't heard. Clad head to foot, in clothes whiter than snow, he left without a backward glance. Yue Chengqing's head drooped. Jiang Yeshui comforted him. Don't worry, he'll cool off. Shee sighed inwardly at this pair of nephews, then gazed after Muzhong Chuyi's retreating back. Between the three of them, Jiang Yeshui still seemed the steadier senior by every measure, despite Muzhong Chuyi being older by a few years. But these were the difficulties of a family he didn't belong to, and it wasn't his place to speak. Just as he prepared to turn away, he glimpsed one of Chonghua Bridge's stone pillars. Shee's gaze darkened for a bit. The old beggar from the time mirror was gone. He'd passed in the second year after Goo Mahng defected. That familiar beggar's song would never ring out here again. Goo Mahng strolled over to Shee, nudging him with an elbow and crossing his arms. Hey, what's Shihajun looking at with those wistful eyes? Muzhong Shensheng? Shee immediately turned. Don't speak nonsense. I got you, didn't I? You're just mad because you got caught. After laughing a moment, he realized even Jiang Yeshui and Yue Chunqing were looking at him sternly. Goo Mahng tactfully pursed his lips and chuckled dryly. Well, sorry everyone, just trying to lighten the mood. Shee didn't bicker with him. I'm leaving too, he said. I'll go to the palace and report back to His Imperial Majesty. Don't I need to enter the palace too? Goo Mahng asked. No, go back to Shih Manor without me. Goo Mahng smiled. Can I stroll around instead? I'll change my features. No one will notice a thing. Where do you want to go? Anywhere. The pastry stall at the Eastern Market, the shadow plays at the Western Market, Apricot Mansion in the South, the perfumed alley in the North. Absolutely not, Shee said coldly. I just want to look around. I won't bet anyone. Shee ground his molars. He didn't explode, but it looked as if he was using a lifetime's worth of forbearance to keep his cool. He lowered his head to look at Goo Mahng and pushed out a sentence from between his teeth. Go back to the manor and wait. Seeing them fight again, Jiang Yeshui sighed. Gu Shishong, the matter of you recovering your memories will be revealed the instant you step into a brothel. Beauties are nice, but isn't your life more important? Fair enough. Jiang Shong's quite reasonable. Goo Mahng heaved a sigh as well. But frankly, Shizun is far too cold and lonely. I didn't mind it when I was witless, but it's going to be a bore now. Why don't I come visit Jiang Shong's manor instead? I need to take Chongqing to Jiang Manor. Chongqing and Xiaoju were both injured, so we'll need to ask Medicine Master Jiang to treat them and get some medicine for Xiaoju. All right. Go on then, Goo Mahng replied wearily. I'll obediently go back and lie down. Shee, can you at least bring me a pack of cards when you come back? Your manner is way too dull. I'd rather go to Luomei Pavilion. He was still speaking when Shee turned to leave. Shee was a key minister in the Bureau of Military Affairs and the descendant of a prestigious family. In recognition of his status, the late emperor had bestowed a token upon him that allowed him to enter the core of the imperial city unannounced. Nonetheless, Shee had always understood the rules. Heavenly grace was one thing, but the emperor's heart was another. Though he had this sort of privilege, he never used it. Just as he had in the time mirror, Shee walked past the ranks of imperial guards. The soldiers turned toward him, lowering their heads to make their obeisance. Their armor shone in the last glow of twilight, scarlet feathers on their helmets rustling. Though Shee had never taken note of it before now, he realized that the imperial guards from 8 years ago seemed to have all been replaced. He didn't see a single familiar face among these inner guards of the imperial city. Ayo! Shihajun, you're back! The attendant eunuch Li paid his respects to Shee as soon as he saw him, sinking into a deep bow. This old slave greets Shihajun. Shee stopped. Could you please report that Shee seeks an audience with His Imperial Majesty? His Imperial Majesty is indisposed and has already retired for the evening, eunuch Li replied. In silence, Shee glanced at the illuminated doors of the Great Hall. Shihajun, please don't misunderstand. The one inside the Great Hall isn't His Majesty. Eunuch Li hastily explained, following the direction of Shee's gaze. Shee furrowed his brow. Then who is it? As he was about to answer, a thought seemed to occur to eunuch Li. Casting a sidelong glance at Shee, he plastered on the sort of warm and suggestive smile the ladies of the harem knew well. Unfortunately, Shee was not of the harem and had no idea what this smile implied. What is it? Why are you smiling? He asked, bemused. Eunuch Li bowed and led him into the Golden Hall's library, smile never faltering. Nothing. Perhaps it's perfect timing. This old slave thinks the one inside the Great Hall would most certainly like to see Shihajun. Who? Shihajun, if you please. Eunuch Li wouldn't answer, and Shee didn't like beating around the bush. He glanced suspiciously at Eunuch Li's stupid smile, paused for a moment, and pushed open the doors to the hall. The sandalwood doors creaked, and the night wind rushed in, settling the lights in the phoenix candelabras aflicker. The handmaiden, Yue Niang, started. She hastily fell to her knees and kowtowed. This servant greets Shihajun. At this, the figure sitting in the middle of those piled office documents lifted her head and met his gaze. Morsi found himself at a loss for words. Princess Mengzi's pretty eyes widened in surprise, a smile blooming across her face like a lotus in clear water. Ah, it's more Dagu. Chapter 108. Women are so hard to deceive. No matter how oblivious Morsi might be, it was impossible to misunderstand Eunuch Li's suggestive tone at this point. Seething, he turned around, only to find that the sly old fox had already made himself scarce. Morsi was rendered speechless. He sighed as he entered the hall and crossed to Mengzi's desk. "What are you doing here?" The night was cold and crisp, and Mengzi's health was frail, so she wore a pale blue coat even indoors. She coughed, then said warmly, "Imperial brother is ill. In the past few days, he hasn't had time to go through the memorials, so I came to assist." Muzhong Mengzi, a mere woman, had not risen to the position of one of Chonghua's 3 gentlemen without reason. She treated the common people with lenience and virtue, was well-versed in matters both political and military, and was no man's inferior when it came to the management of the nation. Though she was physically frail, it was only because she had healed Morsi years ago and succumbed to a chronic ailment afterward. Before that, both her magical abilities and the strength of her spiritual energy reflected an extraordinary innate talent that left her contemporaries, male or female, in the dust. She could no longer fight on the front lines these days, but she could still sit in the command tent. If only the 9 provinces had a precedent of women rulers, the emperor likely would have bestowed on her an official title and the accompanying authority to exercise her true capabilities. Regrettably, women were still women in the eyes of too many. In their opinion, ladies should be arranging their hair in a window or making themselves up in a mirror. Even if they excelled in scholarship or strategy, it would be better to devote themselves to their husbands, fathers, or brothers, the real court officials. What need was there for any girl to show her face in public? Thus, though Muzhong Mengzi was of royal blood, the first princess of a nation, people would usually only mention her to say, "Oh, that's Shizun's future wife. They just haven't tied the knot yet." Though the healing techniques and military stratagems she devised in her youth were impressive, the public's most positive impression of her boiled down to infatuated princess who sacrificed herself for her one true love. And so the emperor had very little choice. In spite of Mengzi's pure and noble character, her talent and her righteous nature, he could give her no important responsibilities. Still, he was loath to hand these memorials, so central to imperial power, off to other nobles. His spirit was willing, but his body was weak. At a glance, it was clear that, out of all his close siblings and cousins, he only had Muzhong Lian to rely on besides Mengzi and Yanping. There was no question of Yanping's capabilities. She had an ample bosom, but no brain. Out of 10 young masters, she would sleep with 9. Young Master Mo was the only one who declined. She might do well if tasked with drawing erotic pictures, but the idea of having her look at military reports was laughable. As for Muzhong Lian, even ignoring the fact that his paternal grandfather had his own designs on the throne, the previous emperor had genuinely considered adopting Muzhong Lian as a son and naming him crown prince in the current emperor's stead. The emperor was destined to hold a grudge toward him, which only left Mengzi. Muzhong Mengzi was clever, wise, clear-headed, and competent. She was unfortunately female, but who was to say this misfortune wasn't the emperor's greatest comfort? In the world as it stood, women could make no sweeping changes. They couldn't accumulate influence or win support. They had no mechanism whereby they could gather power into their own hands. As long as this woman remained unwed, the closest man to her on earth was her eldest brother, the emperor himself. Thus, with Mengzi, he felt utterly at ease. Mengzi coaxed the candles in the library to burn brighter and turned to speak gently to her handmaiden. "Yuanyang, a pot of spring tea for Shizun." "Yes." Yuanyang darted off and swiftly returned with a tray laden with tea and desserts. She arranged each item with care and smiled. Shee, please enjoy. This servant will remain outside, awaiting orders. The handmaiden's gauzy red skirts fluttered as she left the room, and the sandalwood library doors creaked shut behind her. Morsi lowered himself into a seat. How is His Imperial Majesty? How did he fall ill so suddenly? He asked. He won't say, and he doesn't allow the healers from Shenlong Terrace to say much either. Mengzi sighed. I only know he was bedridden for the past few days, but it's nothing serious. I was permitted to visit him this morning. The most dangerous phase has passed, but he's still weak. I'm afraid it'll be another 3 or 4 days of recovery. She paused, then looked inquiringly at Morsi. Modaga, did you come to report on the results of the mission? Yes. Mengzi looked concerned. Did everything go smoothly? Morsi gave her a heavily edited account. Yuan Chengqing and the others were wounded, but they've already gone to Medicine Master Jiang for treatment. There were no other issues. That's good. Mengzi let out a breath. But I'm afraid Imperial Brother won't be well enough to see you for a few days. Modaga should write a report when you return home. I'll pass it on to him on your behalf. Morsi thanked her. Seeing how tired she looked, swamped with documents, he wanted to help her with the memorials. But if the Emperor had handed these to Mengzi instead of assigning them to his officials, they were scrolls he didn't wish others to see. It's getting late, so I'll be heading back. You should get some rest as soon as you finish. Mengzi's pretty eyes shone as she smiled. Leaving so soon? You won't keep me company a while longer? Morsi didn't reply. I'm just teasing, Modaga. Look at you, so travel-worn. How could I have the heart to make you stay with me? Mengzi coughed lightly a few more times, covering her mouth, then added warmly, You should return. Rising, Morsi looked down at her. The night's cold and wet. Have Yuanyang bring you another robe. Mengzi smiled. I will. Morsi took his leave. He'd no sooner walked through the library doors than Yuanyang stepped back in. She had served Mengzi for many years. In front of others, she was a deferential servant, but the minute she was alone with Mengzi, she let her tongue loose, unable to hide her thoughts. As she looked back at the doors through which Morsi had departed, she stamped her foot, plainly dissatisfied. My lady! What is it? Why did you let Shihajun go? Look, you've been back in the city for so long, but this is the first time the two of you have been alone together, and you didn't even try to keep him. Yuanyang pursed her lips in a moue of disappointment. You should at least ask him to stay for dinner or something, she mumbled. Mengzi dipped her brush into the inkstone, speaking as she wrote. Why would I keep him? He doesn't wish to be with me. How could that be? His spiritual core came at a cost of your health. My lady, if you ask Shihajun to go west, he definitely wouldn't turn east instead. The kindness you did him, he owes you an enormous debt. Mengzi smiled. It was only kindness. I don't plan on demanding repayment. What is my lady saying? Of course he must repay it. Faced with Mengzi's indifference, Yuanyang grew anxious. Shihajun is handsome and courageous, and his reputation is excellent too. I heard that in the 3 years he was stationed on the northern frontier, he didn't touch a single woman. Unlike those other young masters who have concubines lined up in rows, you'd be fortunate to marry a husband like that. Leave him be, and a mob of witches will be clawing at each other to become his wife or concubine. How can we let that happen? The longer she spoke, the more fretful she became. I won't stand for it. I won't. He can marry our princess and no one else. He can't be allowed to flirt with any other maiden. Mengzi listened to the girl shouting insolently, but continued writing without a word. Only after a long while did she casually ask, ErHa thinks Shihajun is very handsome too? Of course he is. Yuanyang realized she had been too bold and hastily backpedaled. No. Shihajun is like a holy deity. It's not this servant's place to speak of him. Mengzi smiled as she pressed a seal to a silk memorial scroll on behalf of her brother and blew the cinnabar ink dry. Don't worry, she said. You don't have to say it. I know you girls all like men like him. Tall, righteous, and reliable. All good things. Yuanyang spoke nervously. My lady, even if this servant had 10,000 times more courage, I wouldn't dare. What are you frightened of? Mengzi asked kindly. It's only chat, and I'm only picking a few of his good traits as an example. But have you never thought why such a remarkable person has yet to wed at his age? It's because my lady remains indisposed, Yuanyang mumbled. Why is it my fault? Mengzi looked up, still smiling. If he truly wanted to marry, he would have requested permission from his imperial majesty long ago. Her smile faded. He doesn't want to. That's why he's been dragging it out. And that's why this servant wants my lady and Shee to spend more time together. Look, the two of you rarely have any chance to meet. Yuanyang paused and bit her lip as if steeling herself for what she was about to say. And, my lady, you don't know, but I've heard people talk. While you were away, Princess Yanping tried to Yanping was still a princess. No matter how close Yuanyang was to Mengzi, she didn't dare say the word seduce. In the end, she mumbled over it. She tried to do that to Shee. Look at the initiative she's taking, my lady. Why are you still pushing Shee away? Don't you know you're the only reason he's alive right now? If it were me, I'd feel it wasn't worth it. Mengzi shook her head. A melon torn from the vine isn't sweet. I won't force him into it. My lady! Yuanyang sounded indignant. But given your health, if Shee doesn't ask for your hand now, how long does he plan to make you wait? Don't talk nonsense. Mengzi's voice was stern as she set down the brush. Shee and I are not betrothed. Who is making anyone wait? But I don't want to hear you speak of this again. Yuanyang bit her soft lip. In the end, she hung her head, dejected. Yes, my lady. Taking up her brush, Mengzi unrolled a new memorial. For a while, it was quiet inside the library. Yet soon, Yuanyang started muttering sulkily once more. Shee is so callous and ungrateful. He's already got another woman behind my lady's back. The shame he's brought to my lady. The tip of Mengzi's brush stilled over the scroll. She looked up. What do you mean by this? Yuanyang looked as if she was bursting to speak, but also as if it were unbearable to say. She held her tongue under Mengzi's clear gaze for a long moment before finally blurting out, His hair ribbon! Yuanyang took a deep breath. I didn't expect my lady to notice, but this servant is used to waiting on people. I always take note of the master's clothes and ornaments. The hair ribbon Shee wore today was obviously not his own. It was raw silk, something only commoners use, but the embroidery was very fine. So it's a little tart who likes pretty things and dresses above her station. The words had already left her mouth, so Yuanyang barreled ahead with her eyes and her cheeks puffed in a pout. I could tell right away it belonged to some poor hussy who seduced Shee with her common wiles. You're the only one who could be calm about this. This girl's ribbon has already made it into Shee hair knot. How close must they be? Yet you don't see it. I'm so mad I could die. How can he betray you like this? Mengzi didn't say anything. Her brush had soaked up too much ink. A black splotch landed on the scroll and left a dark stain. She lowered her pretty face to dip her brush again. It's only a hair ribbon, she said in a low voice. Maybe he just needed to try something new. Don't think too much on it. You know how much of a rule follower he is. He's not that kind of person. Enough. Yuanyang fell silent. Mengzi looked up at her. No more of this, she said blandly. Yuar, come here and grind some ink for me. Yes, my lady. Chapter 109. Coffin Library. In the rustling night wind, Morsi left the palace, but he didn't return to Shee Manor. The clues he'd discovered in the time mirror were still on his mind. As his long strides took him away from the Great Hall, he resolved on 3 questions to which he must have answers. Firstly, the black-garbed man. Before defecting, Goo Mahng had met with a man in a mask. That man had spoken of Chonghua's inequities and urged Goo Mahng to turn traitor. And Goo Mahng hadn't said a word to oppose him. So who was that black-garbed man? Secondly, Warrior Soul Mountain. The black-garbed man had brought Goo Mahng to Warrior Soul Mountain just before his defection. When Goo Mahng visited the graves there with Morsi, he'd told Morsi the restricted area felt familiar. There was a good chance Goo Mahng had done something on the other side of the barrier there. But what? What exactly was inside Warrior Soul Mountain's restricted area? Lastly, the prison. After speaking to Lu Zhanxing inside the time mirror, Morsi was certain Goo Mahng had secretly visited this man in prison before defecting. What had Goo Mahng spoken to Lu Zhanxing about? If he could get to the bottom of these three mysteries, he was sure the truth from 8 years ago would surface. But all these events had occurred under a veil of extreme secrecy. Of those who had witnessed them, aside from Goo Mahng himself, one person's identity was unknown, and the other was a dead soul beneath the Yellow Springs. Morsi didn't expect to loosen Goo Mahng's tongue, so two paths of investigation remained. The first was to turn back time. The second was to find the history scrolls from that year. Turning back time required the time mirror, but the power of the ancient godly mirror was tremendous. Mortal bodies could only enter it once per decade. Enter again, and the mirror would devour them and crush them to dust. The time mirror was no longer an option. Morsi's footsteps slowed, and he glanced northward in the direction of the Imperial Censorate, where his hopes of answering these three questions lay. A piece of history stone was embedded in each of Chonghua's palace halls and imperial pavilions. From the day an emperor ascended the throne, he wore a string of pendants made of history stone, not to be removed until the day he died. These stones faithfully recorded all that happened in the empire, and court historians gathered them each month into a volume that was stored in the Imperial Censorate. There were sure to be secret records within the Imperial Censorate related to Goo Mahn's defection. The issue with them was the possibility of falsehood. The royal family had always proclaimed the truth and reliability of the history stones to outsiders, but everyone knew that even if the stones couldn't lie, their keepers could destroy sections of the records. If the nation's ruler ordered historians to expunge some segments of history, who would gainsay him? It was dark now. Night had swallowed the final glimmer of sunset. The stars in the sky shone as bright as the lamps on earth. Morsi gazed at the faraway Imperial Censorate. In the distance, some palace maidens on night patrol wandered with lanterns like a winding snake, passing by the carved white jade railing one after another. Yes, the scrolls inside the Imperial Censorate could be tampered with, but at least there was a chance. The emperor was ill tonight, so the Imperial Guards were mostly concentrated on his private quarters. It was the perfect opportunity to infiltrate. Morsi watched the string of lanterns disappear into the darkness. After a moment of thought, he turned his steps toward the Imperial Censorate. The compound had 2 points of entry and exit, each set with barriers, as well as a layer after layer of guards. This was hardly a hindrance for the top general of the empire. Morsi made it into the main hall without much effort. In contrast to the sumptuous extravagance of most palace buildings, the structure of the Imperial Censorate was unusual. It was more accurately described as a tomb rather than a hall. A lofty monument stood at the entrance, carried on the tortoiseshell back of the statue of Shee, as was traditional for mausoleums. 4 words were engraved upon its stone surface. The past is dead. These words were the work of Chonghua's second emperor. Soon after Chonghua was established, its founding ruler suddenly perished of complications from a wound he incurred in battle. He died without penning any posthumous edict. There was no named successor, nor had it been decided whether the successor would be the eldest son, the one of most merit, or whether this new nation would use the system of fraternal seniority or patrilineal inheritance. Everyone had greedily eyed the empty throne, from brothers of the royal family to powerful officials and noble relatives. The bloody power struggle that followed devastated Chonghua for a full 13 months, during which countless citizens were unjustly imprisoned and loyal souls perished with unresolved grievances. The storm had died down after the 7th son of the founding emperor finally ascended the throne. But even sitting on the throne couldn't guarantee a ruler peace under these conditions. Chonghua's second ruler lived day and night, tangled in schemes and conspiracies. Plots targeted his empress, his sons, and even the emperor himself. He could never rest easy. In the end, his paranoia escalated to compulsion. He visited the imperial censorate at frequent intervals to look through the records over and over again. Where did a certain imperial brother go today? Whom did a certain important subject visit yesterday? If he caught wind of the slightest aberration, he traced it like a man possessed, unearthing every detail and demanding the lives of all who thought to plot against him. The second emperor was exhausted by such a life. It was only after he grew old and passed the throne to his son that he understood the past died with the passage of time, and the bygones should be left as bygones. He'd come to this palace hall that was so familiar to him and so significant to Chonghua, and set down a monument at the doorway, leaving behind these 4 words: "The past is dead." What was dead was dust. Why obsess over it? Why look back? The third ruler was greatly moved upon seeing this monument. As a gesture of mourning for his imperial father in the honor of the late emperor's final wishes, he had the imperial censorate rebuild in the style of a tomb. In this singular palace hall, the building was a cemetery and the past was the deceased, warning all those who visited to forgive and let go. If it wasn't important, they shouldn't pursue it. Even if it was, they shouldn't allow it to possess them. In the time since, few came to the imperial censorate in search of the past. There were only guards, but they were relaxed and idle. Morsi entered without alerting them. His steel-toed military boots clicked on the stone, echoing in the silence. The imperial censorate was cavernous, structured like a real mausoleum with 12 tomb beasts lining the path. The deepest passages delved at least 150 feet into the ground. Tomb rooms lined either side of the main path. Within them, scrolls recording the history of the empire were filled by year and stored with a sealed stone outside, carved with the dynasty and the generation. Morsi swiftly reached the room with records from 8 years ago. As he gazed at the glimmering gold inscription upon it, he hesitantly raised a hand and sensed a powerful barrier. The tomb beast carved atop the stone door rumbled to life and spoke. "Who?" "Who?" The sonorous voice echoed endlessly down the passage. "Goes there." This was a talisman seal set down by the second emperor. The imperial censorate held the official records of the empire and should reasonably be open to the public. But if anyone could go in and investigate the past of others as they pleased, palace affairs would become even more of a bloodbath. Thus, the second emperor put down this barrier with a strict condition. Anyone who entered the chamber must truthfully report their name to the tomb beast. If any incident occurred as a result of the information divulged here, they could be investigated. The emperor himself was not excepted from this rule. This was a grave mistake, Morsi knew. But it was a measly price to pay to learn the truth. He put his hand over the spirit stone inlaid in the tomb beast's forehead and spoke clearly. "Shee Manor, Morsi." The beast's red spirit stone eyes shone as if to lay bare the truth of Morsi's words. After a moment, the glow faded, and the giant seal stone made a thunderous noise. A voice that seemed to ring across the ages sang out, "The past is dead." With this final warning from the second emperor to his descendants, the door swung open, revealing to Morsi's eyes a stone room with 365 coffins emanating a bone-chilling cold. Each coffin represented one of the 365 days in the year. All that occurred in Chonghua each day was collected within a jade scroll, catalogued and placed within its coffin. Morsi knew which days he needed to investigate as well as he knew his own hands. He walked without hesitation toward a row of coffins in the depths of the room. The truth was so close. His heart raced. Morsi stopped in front of a coffin, his dark eyes flashing. Yet as he stretched his hand toward the wood of the lid, he suddenly tensed. Morsi's eyes darted to the side of the coffin, where the dust had been disturbed. Someone had opened this coffin before him. When he pushed the lid aside, his galloping heart dropped like a stone into the ravine, tumbling endlessly downward. It was complete disorder inside the coffin. The jade scrolls that held the records of the past were destroyed. some of the narrow slips more or less shattered to powder. Even before he arrived, he hadn't expected this escapade to go smoothly, but Morsi felt he had taken a great blow upon seeing the state of things with his own eyes. He braced both hands on the side of the coffin, closing his eyes and forcing himself to calm. The scrolls in the coffin were made of Kunlun's spirit jade. They should be near impossible to destroy. If they had been shattered, it was with intention. Someone who knew the secrets from that year didn't want them exposed, and this person was certainly someone who wielded great power in Chonghua. Under his strong brows, Morsi's eyes flickered beneath his eyelids. Shadows flashed through his mind. Muzhonglian, censored officials, or the emperor. Perhaps even Goo Mahng himself, before he defected. All kinds of guesses flooded his thoughts. In this moment of torment in which he felt his insides were splitting apart, a clamor sounded from outside, hauling Morsi back to the present. Footsteps and shouts rang out in the distance. "Someone's trespassed into the Imperial Censorate! Quick, find them!" Morsi glanced toward the open stone doors, then down at the coffin filled with shattered jade scrolls. He might never get the chance to come back after today. Acting on impulse, Morsi waved a hand and summoned all the jade scroll fragments into his Qianquan pouch, uncaring of whether they could be repaired. The cultivators guarding the Imperial Censorate had assembled in the hall, weapons drawn. Morsi had planned to hide here, then quickly leave this chaotic scene before the cultivators spread out. But on second thought, he remembered he had already given up his identity to open this tomb. The guards only needed to question each tomb beast. It would take at most a shurchun before news of him sneaking into the censorate made its way to the emperor. What could he possibly accomplish in that time? Morsi took a deep breath. He adjusted the fall of his robes before slowly stepping out from the depths of the room. Although the guards were still far off, the instant the captain noticed Morsi, he raised his sword and cried, "Thief! How dare you bypass the Imperial Guards and trespass—" In the next moment, the words died in his mouth as a figure strode slowly out from the shadows. Moonlight fell upon his fine-featured face, and the clamorous Imperial cultivators froze in shock. Some even fell to their knees out of habit. Shee He, this subordinate deserves death. This subordinate didn't realize the Honorable Shee He was here. This subordinate misspoke." Morsi's prestige in Chonghua was unmatched, and his image as a righteous and honorable man was deeply impressed in people's hearts. Had anyone else appeared unannounced in the censorate, the Imperial Guards would assume they were here for some nefarious purpose. But because it was Morsi, the guards automatically assumed Shee He had accepted some mission too sensitive for their ears. No one imagined Shee He would defy heavenly will for anything or anyone. He was depending on this. He gambled on his 30 years of spotless reputation as he walked in front of these dumbstruck guards, his sharp gaze sweeping over their youthful faces. "There is no thief," he said. "A secret order from the Bureau of Military Affairs required me to investigate records from these years." The captain was stunned. Does Shee He have his Imperial Majesty's command token?" "I've already said it's a secret order." Morsi's pale lips parted, his frosty expression accompanied by an equally cold statement. "What command token?" "But this is a military matter. It's highly classified. I'd hope to keep it quiet, but I see the diligence of you gentlemen is to be commended." Morsi gazed at the leader. "If the captain suspects me, you may come with me to his Imperial Majesty's quarters to confirm the facts." Who didn't know that the emperor had been severely ill the past few days? Asking for confirmation would not only offend Shee He, it would earn the captain a tongue-lashing from the emperor and swift expulsion from the palace. Moreover, the man standing before them now was Morsi, the most upright and honest general of Chonghua, the empire's most decorated commander, fourth in his line of pure-blooded generals. What was there to suspect? The captain of the Imperial Guard lowered his head and cupped his hands. "Shee He, forgive me. This subordinate was only following procedure. I beg Shee He to pardon any offense." "No harm done," Morsi said lightly. "You must only remember to tell no one what you saw here tonight." "Understood." Calm and aloof as ever, Morsi left the Imperial Censorate. Only after stepping outside and feeling the night wind upon him did he realize sweat had soaked through his robes. This matter was dealt with for the moment, but there was no wall on earth that blocked every draft. The news of his visit to the imperial censorate would leak sooner or later. Morsi lifted his face to the moon hanging above the capital, casting its frosty glow on city roofs. His fingers inside his sleeves curled around the Qianquan pouch that held the fragments of jade scrolls. Such badly damaged scrolls could only be repaired by the finest master artificer. Morsi had not a minute to lose. He needed to somehow find an extremely powerful, extremely trustworthy artificer. Almost as soon as the thought occurred to him, a suitable person came to mind.
Watch is gonna be Zhang Yeshui.
Chapter 110, Strange Omens. Out of all those who had the ability, the only one he could trust was Jiang Yeshui. Morsi wasted no time rushing toward Zixin Forge. The hour was very late. Zixin Forge was tucked away from the noisy heart of the city, so he encountered few people on the journey. Halfway there, a carriage burst from the cold fog. He could see as it neared that it was painted with vermilion bat sigils, the four corners of its elaborate canopy draped with golden bells that tinkled as the wheels spun. The coachman wore a short gauze hat, and his sleeves were narrow. With a crack, his crop landed on the flank of the golden-winged Pegasus in the carriage traces. Make way! Make way for Wang Shujun! Morsi frowned. Mu Zhonglian? Where was he off to at this time of night? He had no time for further thought before the carriage was hurtling toward him. It was too dark for the coachman to see Morsi's face. He shouted, Make way! Make way! Don't block Wang Shujun's path! Morsi dove out of the way. The man behind him pulled his wife to the side and respectfully lowered his head to wait for Mu Zhonglian's carriage to pass. The moment it rattled off, he spat in disgust. It's the dead of night, but he's still yelling, Make way! Make way! Is he shouting at the ghosts to clear the roads? There's barely anyone out. What's the point? Inwardly, Morsi sighed. Truly, Mu Zhonglian was an unpopular, rich wastrel. But as he turned back to glance at the dust kicked up by the carriage's passage, he felt vaguely that there was something strange afoot. Mu Zhonglian was a lazy man. He wouldn't get out of bed early, and he definitely wouldn't leave his manor in the middle of the night if it wasn't urgent. So what was happening tonight? The Wangshu Manor carriage swiftly disappeared around the corner. Morsi was overcome by an ominous premonition, his heart thudding violently. But at the moment, he had his own urgent task. He wasn't the type to put much stock in intuition, so he paid it no heed. Morsi turned away and strode toward his destination. The rheumy-eyed Uncle Song opened the door to Zixin Forge. When he glimpsed Morsi's face in the clear moonlight, he stood stunned for a moment. Ah, it's Mo Gongzi. Is Qingshu Elder here? Oh, Yeshui. Song Laoban coughed, voice thick. Footnote number 7. Laoban, this is a term of address for a shopkeeper or a proprietor of a business. That means boss. Yeshui isn't at the shop tonight. He said he had something to do and slipped out earlier. This man had the tendency of the very old to ramble, so he happily continued. He said he'd get me some desserts from Lianhua stall tomorrow morning. What a filial child. He knows that store has the best osmanthus cakes. If Morsi let the old man natter on, he'd be standing here all night. He gently cut him off. Uncle, I have urgent matters to discuss with him. Do you know where he went? The old man beamed. Of course I do. He went to the academy. He probably won't be back until morning. I see. Uncle, many thanks. Morsi coaxed Uncle Song back into the shop to rest. As he left, he closed Zixin Forge's doors on Jiang Yeshui's behalf, then put up the closed plaque before setting out for the academy. But soon enough, Morsi crossed paths with another traveler. This time, it was a black and blue carriage hung with silver skeleton bells, with an owl totem painted on the cabin. This carriage belonged to the Sushu Terrace elder, Zhou He. Zhou He was a noble quite close to the imperial family. His status wasn't as high as Mu Zhonglian's, nor did he throw his weight around like Wang Shujun. But all of Chonghua knew he was cruel, volatile, and eccentric. for he loved Sushu Terrace and its magical knowledge more than he loved his own Zhou clan. He was an absolute madman when it came to spellcraft. As Zhou He's carriage flew over the limestone path, Moshi found himself frowning. What was going on tonight? Despite the late hour, instead of remaining asleep in their beds, Mu Zhonglian and Zhou He were rushing toward the city streets. Could the emperor have taken a turn for the worse? But if the emperor were that ill, Mengzi wouldn't be going over scrolls so calmly, and he himself would have at least heard something. He watched Elder Zhou He's carriage lights dwindle into orange specks that flickered like stars, swallowed up by the endless night. The anxious thud of his heart grew stronger. He felt as if a shapeless outline hovered before him, the scepter of a crisis yet to occur. Shizun. When he arrived outside the academy, those spiritual jade doors as tall as 10 men were shut for the night. The guard was pleasant, but still conscientiously stopped Shizun. It's very late. The academy doors are already locked. Is there something I can help you with? The academy was a unique place. Here, all of Chonghua's brightest young talents cultivated in seclusion before emerging into the world. Hence its moniker, Dawn Academy. Since the academy was filled with inexperienced children, its protections rivaled those of the imperial palace. The same Shizun who could go unannounced into the palace would be interrogated at the doors of the cultivation academy. Moshi knew the rules and remained calm. I'm looking for someone. Is Qingshu Elder staying within the academy tonight? Ah, so Shizun is here for Qingshu Elder. The guard smiled. Qingshu Elder is receiving a guest today, and the guest has not yet left. Would you like to wait? Jiang Yexue was a gentleman through and through, and many came to him with requests because they knew he was kind and easy to talk to. But Moshi was still surprised to hear a guest had come to call immediately after they returned from Bat Island and stayed so late. Moshi didn't wish to intrude, but the repair of the jade scroll could not be delayed. No matter, I'll go see him myself. In accordance with academy rules, he took a visitor's jade token and left his seal on the booklet. The great doors opened for him, and he stepped into the Cultivation Academy grounds. It was a quiet, clear night. The little cultivators had to abide by the rules set by the elders and were asleep by the hour of high, shortly after full dark. This late, there was no one about. The eaves of the sprawling academy rooftops swooped up like wings, their golden tiles glowing in the silver light like a butterfly perched quietly on the curtain of the sky. Under the bright moonlight, it was like walking in a dream. After graduating and enlisting, Moshi had rarely returned to the academy. Fortunately, it had not changed much. Neither the drill grounds and courtyards nor the halls and dormitories were much different from when he was cultivating and learning magic. Moshi didn't waste time reminiscing. He clutched the Qiankun pouch holding secrets and hopes and strode purposefully toward the residences where the elders lived. When he reached the white jade bridge that linked the elders' residences with the sword practice platform, he spied a figure walking toward him from afar. Moshi stared for a moment in some amazement. Muzhong Chuyi? The man's head was lowered, so he didn't see Moshi standing at the other end of the jade bridge. He walked alone in silence. Absent was his usual immortal aura and floating grace. His steps were slightly unsteady, his hair not slightly askew, wisps falling loose around his jade-like face. Moshi frowned. Muzhong Xianxiang. Muzhong Chuyi's head shot up. His usually aloof and proud face wore a layer of panic and distress he hadn't time to conceal. Yet what astonished Moshi most were the ends of Muzhong Chuyi's eyes, which were reddened as if he had endured some extraordinary disgrace. All his humiliation seemed to have transformed into scarlet fishtails, like rouge spreading in water toward the sharp corners of his phoenix eyes. You... Muzhong Chuyi bit his pale, dry lips. They were bleeding. Scarlet appeared where his lips touched. He whipped his head aside, but, as if afraid evasiveness would be more conspicuous, he forced himself to turn back before long, gazing at Moshi through eyes cold as frost and sharp as a knife. Those eyes were misty. Perhaps Muzhong Chuyi thought he was hiding his emotions well and managed to look imposing. Moshi only felt that he was concealing his turmoil poorly. Vulnerability, resentment, shame, all of it was plain to see. After a long silence, Mo Xi asked, Xiancheng, are you unwell? A pause. Yes. They looked at each other, hearts heavy with their own concerns. Neither had a gentle temperament, nor were they especially close. Expressing any more care was futile. Mo Xi didn't like meddling, and Muzhong Chuyi liked it even less. Good night, Muzhong Chuyi said. They both performed a shallow obeisance and strode past each other. The night wind set Muzhong Chuyi's snowy white robes aflutter, the faint scent of orange blossoms rising from his sleeves. Mo Xi tilted his head as he caught the hint of the second scent beneath the refined fragrance. One he had smelled on someone else before. But when he tried to pin it down, it was like grabbing smoky mist with his bare hands. It slipped his grasp. Mo Xi frowned as he watched Muzhong Chuyi's silhouette melt into the darkness. What did he come to the academy for? He murmured. Of course he received no answer. Mo Xi stood for a moment, then turned back toward his destination. Although the elders' residences were all in the same area, they were well spaced out, and each was constructed according to the occupants' tastes. For example, the residence of Caiwei Elder, who taught wood elemental magic, was hidden within a jungle of plants and vines, the walls covered with rose climbers. Each flower was the size of one's spread hand, and bloomed thick and lush year-round. Chonghua Elder, who taught swordsmanship, lived in a residence surrounded by a barrier of white-yellow lightning. A large garden surrounded his house as well, but it contained neither plants nor stone. Instead, what sprouted from the ground were a few thousand swords of different shapes and ages. Jiang Yeshui lived in a simple wooden house with a row of elegant bamboo swaying outside. Among this crowd of crazies, his home seemed uncommonly restrained. Mo Xi followed the narrow path of white gravel to Jiang Yeshui's door. He crooked his slender fingers and rapped sharply on the wood. Qingshu Elder. There was no movement from within the house. After a few more knocks, the door opened with a creak. A little clay servant falteringly peered out through the crack in the door. Someone had smashed its clay skull. Only half its head remained, and it was sobbing pathetically. Jiang Yeshui had always cherished these clay servants. He would never break them himself. Mo Xi's heart skipped a beat as he asked, Where is your lord? My lord, lord. The servant stuttered incoherently. It had been damaged too badly and stalled on the same words over and over again as it tried to complete its sentence. My lord, don't, lord. Seeing as the door was now ajar and the clay servant was broken, Mo Xi was afraid something had happened to Jiang Yeshui. He pushed the door open and stepped into the room. What he encountered inside was only more chilling. The bamboo flooring was splattered with blood. Next to the screen door, the exquisite Rou ware vase, with its round base and elegantly tapered top, lay in forlorn shards on the ground. Jiangzhong! Mo Xi strode into the inner hall and found it empty. He continued to the bedroom, opening the door to total darkness. No lamps were lit, and the window screen was tightly shut. But the air was suffused with that familiar scent, the one he couldn't place. Mo Xi raised a hand and summoned a fireball, throwing light over the room. There was no one inside, but the bedding was in disarray. A few wrinkled, snow-white garments were tossed in the corner, but nothing else was out of place. Shizun? A surprised voice sounded from behind him. Mo Xi whirled to see Jiang Yeshui sitting in his wheelchair, clad in a loose bathrobe the color of flax. He was wiping at dripping hair like inky jade as he looked at Mo Xi in shock. What are you doing here? Okay, so just going over some notes. Of course, the first thing I want to talk about is the most pressing thing from chapter 106, and that is the shift and the relationship of all the Yue brothers / uncles, whatever. But yes, so we have Yue Chenqing, who finally spoke his mind about Muzhong Chuyi. And of course, these thoughts did not come out of nowhere. They didn't just appear. These are things that he's held in his heart over time, but always pushed aside or pushed down out of respect and still, yes, adoration for his uncle. But it was nice to see him finally go ahead and just let it out, let it rip, and tear his uncle a new one and truly defend Jiang Yeshui. Also, it's nice to see that there is a level of respect that is between them now, more so on Yue Changqing respecting Jiang Yeshui's side. Even though he's not willing to call him Da Ge, he's willing to at least address him in a different manner, which he was struggling, which was so cute because he was like, Jiang-ar, which of course you guys remember, if you put R after someone's name, like Fungar from Peerless, that's more affectionate. And he was also trying to be respectful by maybe just saying Qingxu elder. So that was nice. Another thing that I really appreciated, it was just like a small moment, but when Muzhong Chuyi stormed out because he was so upset and Morsi was going to chase after him, Goo Mahng was like, hey, can't you see he was on the verge of tears? And so it's just nice to see how observant Goo Mahng is. And again, pulling out that character of his, his name, meaning, considerate of others and everything like that. Because even people he's not close to, he's always considerate. Like, he's like, don't you think it would be embarrassing if you went to find him now? So I just, again, small thing, but I love that Meat Bun brought that out. And of course, now we know that Yue Changqing is up to date on the things concerning Goo Mahng. So hopefully that goes over well. Hopefully he doesn't blab. And then we also have Jiang Yeshui noticing that Goo Mahng is wearing Morsi's ribbon. Oh my God. And then we have Princess Meng's servant girl, Yuanyang, noticing it as well. Y'all gotta be more careful, buddies. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was actually from the part going from page 110 to 111, where it was basically talking about Goo Mahng and the worries that he had about him and Morsi being discovered when they were younger. Basically, because Morsi is of noble status and really this unattainable person, he was worried about what would happen to Morsi if people ever found out that he was sleeping with him, a lowly slave. So I'm just wondering if that is possibly another reason why, when they were younger, he never fully committed to Morsi and always said things like, oh, this is casual, men sleeping together, there's nothing too out of the ordinary, because it's possible that he was acting out of fear and concern for what would happen. On top of the fact that, homosexuality was already against the law there. So that's another reason, which again lines up with his name. Then of course we have him reflecting on, I guess, everything that has happened to him since he came back to Chonghua, as a trader. Just thinking about how even still now, Morsi has been protecting him, standing up for him, treating him well and everything. And he's like, this guy is insane. And basically my plan to make him hate me isn't working. So it was nice though to see that, yes, he does remember everything that he's done as Wolfgege. And he even sees how, even if Morsi won't admit it, he's been doing things out of care and concern for Goo Mahng. So the next thing I kind of want to talk about, not for long, is Princess Meng's and just her whole deal. So first off, we have that she's a very capable woman. In fact, she's extraordinary. She has great talents that honestly, if she wanted to be, she could be, not if she wanted to be, if she was a man, that she could rule the nation because she's just that good. And it sucks because they live in a society where women aren't worth anything other than, bearing children and taking care of their spouses, brothers, fathers, blah, 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 snore. And the only reason the emperor actually trusts her is simply because she's a woman and can't gain any influence on others. And that's just one of those things where I'm not going to go into too much detail because, y'all, we already know, especially when it comes to a lot of these Danmei stories that are based in ancient China and stuff like that. It just sucks that even a clever woman, even a smart and wise woman, ain't really seen as anything more than, oh, that's Morsi's future wife. And then she's not. we, confirmed by Princess Mengzi that they are not betrothed to each other. They aren't to wed. This is just what people are saying because, like Yuanyang, all of the people think that since she sacrificed so much of herself to keep Morsi alive, that the right thing for him to do would be to marry Princess Mengzi. But here's my perspective. First off, why does he have to repay her specifically with marriage? And then, why does he have to repay her at all? Not to say that he shouldn't, because if I were in that scenario, I definitely would want to repay the person that did such a kind act to me. But why do we live in a world where it's like, okay, if someone does a kindness for you, then you absolutely must repay them back? Like, we shouldn't be doing things, and she's not, just to receive things back. There are going to be some acts of kindness in which that person does not give us something back for it. And that's not even to say that that's a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. In some cases, yeah, depending on who it is, if someone's doing an act of kindness for you, you would expect it to be reciprocated, whenever you needed it. But I just hate that their society is like, oh, she did this kindness, so he should definitely pay her back. And specifically with marriage. Why couldn't he have any other, way of showing his appreciation for what she did? And so it's just sucky to see that that's how people think. And then even more specifically, Yuanyang, she just thinks that Shee Hejun is being disrespectful to Princess Mengzi. And it's like he's not. They're not together and they're not to be wed. And even after Princess Mengzi made this clear, the maidservant is still like, he's being so disrespectful and ungrateful because he won't marry her. Can't he be kind to her whenever he sees her? Can't he be considerate whenever he sees her? Like, what are we doing? Anyway, let's not talk about that anymore. There is one thing that Princess Mengzi said, so yay for a Mandarin lesson really quick, because this is an actual saying, and I wanted to tell you guys on page 125, she had mentioned that she wasn't going to force him to be with her and basically said, a melon torn from the vine isn't sweet. So that phrase, I'm going to say it slowly. It's 强扭的瓜不甜. 强扭的瓜不甜. So first off, just so you guys know, 强 is like to force or strong. So when she said, I won't force it, 强, there's that. And then 扭 is to like twist, basically. So when you think of 强扭, like twisting, strongly twisting something or forcing something off. And then de gua is just like, if you put de, it becomes possessive. So then it's like a strongly twisted and forced melon. Gua, melon. Bu, not. Tian, sweet. So 强扭的瓜不甜. So for anyone who may not understand that, basically when you are forcefully twisting a melon off of the vine, that means you're pulling it off before it is done, before it is ripe, before it is ready. So it's just their way of saying when you force something to happen, the result or the reward of it is actually not going to be great. So that's all she's saying. 强扭的瓜不甜. A melon torn from the vine isn't sweet. Mwah. So then, moving on to Morsi going to the Imperial Censorate. First off, I am concerned that he went and he knows that he's going to be called out for it or caught for it. I don't know what will happen with that. I suppose I won't be too concerned, but I am just a smidget. So we'll see what happens, especially when, maybe the emperor asks, what specifically were you going there to look for? I guess that's where my concern lies. And then he clearly doesn't lie often because the man was soaked in his own sweat. So poor Morsi. It was sucky to see that once he got inside, the files from that specific time were completely destroyed and shattered and everything. So we just need to know I guess we don't need to know who it was that shattered it, or maybe we do. I don't know. But when he thought, oh, I need to go to the most powerful and trusted artificer, I was like, oh God, it's going to be Jiang Yexue. And y'all already know how I feel about Zhang Yeshui. I was like, no, he's not the person to go to. But, it is what it is. But then on his way there, he comes across two carriages it's late at night and it's suspicious as hell. Is Mu Zhonglian's and this Zhou He person who's trusted of the noble family. But instead of following them because he doesn't really do like, oh, intuition says this or that, he stays on his mission. And what he ends up coming across is finding out that even Zhang Yeshui is out late, but he's at the academy. And he goes there and he runs across Muzhong Chuyi, which I'm going to assume the person that Zhang Yeshui was meeting with was indeed Muzhong Chuyi, which is concerning because the man did not look well when he left. He looked disgraced and shamed and everything, and there was blood on his lips. And so I was like, what did Zhang Yeshui do to him? Only for us to go into Zhang Yeshui's residence and see that, yeah, there was blood. So I don't know. I'm a little concerned, and I don't even know why just yet for Muzhong Chuyi and whatever it was that was done to him. So I guess we'll be finding that out in the next chapters because of where I stopped. Anyway, one thing I wanted to say to you guys was that probably from here on out, not to say that I won't say anything after my recordings and whatnot, but I am thinking about making my commentary at the end of my videos a bit shorter, just for, which I know sometimes they're short anyway when I don't have a lot to say, but just for the fact that I'm also like taking notes to go over things with you all in the live sessions after we discuss books. It's just a lot and very repetitive for me, maybe not necessarily for you guys to listen, but for me in the process, like when I'm taking notes, I'm typing them out and then I'm having to look through them to see, okay, what notes am I going to talk about at the end of my recording, and then putting them into my organizer to talk about them for the live sessions where we do the recap and discussion. And it's just a lot. So I don't want to have to make separate notes like, okay, these are the notes I'm going to talk about for the recording, and these are what I'm going to talk about for the live session. And I don't feel like doing extra work like, oh, I'm going to bold this part. I'm going to talk about this specifically at the end of my recording. It's just a lot is all I'm saying, because I try to make my notes a lot and hefty so that when I finally organize them into whatever themes and stuff like that for the recap, then I'll have as much information as possible. And then I'll figure out from there, like what I'm going to talk about, yada, yada. So just letting y'all know that the amount of notes I take at the end is probably going to diminish quite a bit because it's just a lot right now. Otherwise, I don't really have much else to say. I will go ahead and notify you guys now that I've gotten everything like officially squared away. I am, again, leaving Friday morning, early Friday morning, like 6 a.m. at the latest to get to my family, to have the funeral on Saturday. Going to spend time with them Saturday and Sunday and Monday. My flight isn't until 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which means most likely, unless I get gusto reading between today and tomorrow and am able to like upload things in advance, you guys won't be getting a video from me until, like I said, Tuesday or Wednesday. So fortunately, I'm glad I get to stay longer with my family because I was concerned about having to do a turn and burn. I didn't really want to do that. So yeah, I'm going to see and it's only if I have the energy to do so, because I also have schoolwork. But if I do have the energy to like record more, and it maybe I'll just do like shorter videos, who knows, then I'll do that. So you guys can still have something on Monday. Well, Patreon would have something on Monday, and then obviously it would be Wednesday for YouTube. Nevertheless, I hope you guys have a great day, because now I'm just talking to talk. And 我爱你们.